of you is on Twitter, I'm Seba Wita, which is like the first 4 letters of my first name and surname. Pictures are appreciated. If you tweet pictures of me, I'll let you play with my robot or drone, etc. So I'm Sebastian Witalec. I consider myself a jack of all Angular, so I do all sort of Angular stuff, and I love my robots, so I'm their master. But that's enough about me, okay? I want to actually tell you a story about like where I live and what happened nearby. So I live in London, and London is full of parks. Like London is really green and it's really cool, and there's like squirrels everywhere, and they're really cute, right? Like squirrels are cute. Like you actually can go like feed them, give them some nuts, and they're really nice, right? Like, and that's what all of us think, right? But are they really that nice? Are they? You don't know that. You really don't know that. You see, this is Jack the squirrel. One day, he realized that there are some people that have peanut allergies. So he started running around, the park and throwing peanuts at those people, or like pretty much everyone, and trying to see who's going to have a weird reaction. And I was like, that's a little bit weird. But Jack was just the beginning. The bastards, they started arming up. They had bazookas, machine guns, and everything was just like going out of hands. Like people stopped going to the park, to walk their dogs, and everything. Like literally, the park was dominated by squirrels. And we're like, damn, what are we gonna do? Like, should we call police? Should we call the Stormtroopers? So the Stormtroopers came and was like, hey, you know what? Throwing peanuts at people is not cool. It's not cool. So we kind of thought like, okay, the whole rebellion was under control, everything was fine, and it's like the squirrels are gonna behave. Well, you know what? When I said that they had bazookas, well, it worked. It was like the Stormtroopers, they got destroyed, like they got annihilated completely. And I was like, damn, like I really like that park. I was like, this park was just like 2 minutes walk from my home. I don't want to go, like take a bus like to the next park for 10 minutes. That's like too much effort, right? So I said like, okay, let's call for help. Let's see who can help us, right? It's like there's bound to be somebody, right? Suicidal enough to fight against the squirrels, right? So the robots answered the call. They said like, well, we don't really have lives or anything. Like, we don't have conscience. Like, just give us batteries and, like, we'll go for war with you. Like, we'll help you. So it's, like, pretty cool. OK, so we have some volunteers here, but we need to communicate with them somehow, right? It's like all of us, like, we talk all different languages, but, robots will talk something tech, like they'll say hi in ASCII, and most normal people won't understand. Like, to be honest, I wouldn't understand because they're going to beep it like R2-D2 or something, right? Actually, I have a funny story about R2-D2, but that's after. Not today, actually. So the thing is like, so we have to have a way to communicate with those guys. And then in this case, well, we can use Bluetooth, right? So different devices use different technologies, but like my Roboarmy, they're like Bluetooth run. And the way you communicate with devices using Bluetooth is as follows. Like, all the functionality that a robot or any like a watch or something will have will be divided into a bunch of services. So you could have a service for, let's say this is a tank, right? That will have a dashboard service, and they will have a weapons service, and maybe drive control service, right? And then each of those services will have their own ID, but also they'll have a bunch of characteristics. So for dashboard, you might have a speed indicator and a fuel indicator, right? So if you have access to these 2 characteristics, you know how fast the tank is going, okay? Then for weapons, you might have a laser and a cute ray, because, fight squirrels, you cute them, right? And then for drive control, you might have a steering wheel, maybe accelerator, and a brake. And that's kind of like the idea. And also, those services are divided into either, they're read-only or write-only, or like for notifications. So the services also have specific purposes, okay? So once we have the services we're interested in characteristics, then we can start thinking of sending a command. So imagine we want to reload our acute array. So what we're doing, we're taking our weapon service from their acute array, and then we're sending a command of like hex 02, 32, and FF, right? And maybe each of those attributes has a different meaning for the specific tank, okay? And then we can basically collate this command into something like this, where we say, I want to use this service characteristic and this instruction. And then once we send it to the tank, it will go and reload in this case, that was a qt rate of 50%, and that's pretty much going to work. So that's the theory behind Bluetooth. And then after that, basically, we can talk to the devices either from a web browser or from a mobile application, right? Or you could have some additional like Arduino chips, etc. But today, I just want to focus on web and mobile. So the first candidate is the web Bluetooth that you can use inside Chrome. And I don't exactly know what was the first version that it was working, but it's been there for like the last 2-3 years. So I'm pretty sure that your Chrome browsers will support this. And the way we use it, like we go through like a bunch of steps where you have to add web Bluetooth typings to your project, and then we go through each of those steps. So let me go through them. So first thing, you can install a type/web Bluetooth, so that TypeScript gives you a lot of support on how you deal with it. And then after that, you can add the reference. And here's the first step. So automatically, you will get the navigator. If you write navigator.bluetooth.requestDevice, and then you say, OK, I'm looking for a device that name maybe starts with word Mambo, and then it should have this service UUID in there. What this will do is it will open up in the browser like a little window that will automatically search for all the Bluetooth devices that fulfill this criteria, and then show them in the list. OK? And then when you select the device and say, OK, I want to connect to this one or pair to this one, this function will return a promise with a device you selected. So at this point, you're not connected just yet, but you have the device that your user wants to connect to. OK? So now that we have the device, the next step is do the connection, right? So go to the device called .gat.connect. And again, this returns a promise, so we can await, and we're getting a server. So a server is where we get all the services and characteristics from. So having a server, I can, for example, call server.getPrimaryService, and then provide the service UID I'm interested in. So like that time when we had the weapon service, I could just provide the ID of the weapon service, and I will get that object. Again, promise, so we're getting in there. And then once I have the service, I can get the characteristic. So in this case, just service.getCharacteristic, passing the characteristic I want, and I'm going to get the characteristic object. So this is kind of the setup phase, right? So at this point, very often, you might be interested in 2 different services. And then for those services, you might have more than 1 characteristic, right? So you basically repeat these steps a few times. Not the connect, just get service and get characteristic. And once you have all the characteristics you're interested in using, we're getting to the next step. So if you want to read any value from the read service, you can just call characteristic.readValue. And that will give you like a value that you have to use getUint8 to parse it. And then you can convert it to, sometimes it'll be a string or it'll be a number, so you can actually extract the values. So that's how we read the information from the devices. And if you want to send an instruction, what we need is construct an int8 array and then pass in the values that we want. So we can pass them either as hex values or decimals or binary, whichever suits you in this case. So we construct that int8 array, and we just take our characteristic and just say .write value, and then pass that int8 array. And as soon as you do that, the instruction will get sent to the device, and then you perform the action. Pretty straightforward. So the first volunteer arrived, and then is ready to help us. So that's the Parrot Mambo, and he's going to be our scout, to say. He's got a camera, he's got a gun, so he's going to be very useful. And figuring out how it worked was a little bit painful in a way, because there was like few tricks that I had to know that wasn't necessarily documented. So before I can tell the drone to take off, I have to set it, what is maximum speed, what is maximum turn speed, how high could it go, etc. Like, I have to always set up the default. So like, I lost half of my hair trying to figure it out, because I was like, take off, and the drone was like, I was like, come on, guy. And then once I figured it out, it was fine. So what I did is actually I created an NPM library. So if you're writing an Angular application and you have one of those drones, you can just install Mambo Angular service. And so if you call mambo service.search, it will trigger the pop-up, and you get the object. And then once you have the object, you could just say drone.takeoff or drone.takeoff set roll, so it's kind of like go sideways or go up and down. So this is kind of quite useful. So let me show you how that looks in action. This is serious stuff. So inside my application, am I looking at the right app? Yeah, Mambo service. So you see, like, all I'm really doing is just saying request device, and then once the user accepts, I get the device, and I created this drone object. So after I have the drone object, I have a connect function, and all the connect function just says like this device dot gat.connect, and I'm connecting to the guy. The next thing is the initialize. So this is where I'm actually setting up like the defaults for like what's the maximum speed and maximum height, etc. But I want to show you the takeoff command. So again, this is my this is a object that wraps my characteristic. So whenever I say a write without response command, basically takeoff means send 0, 1, 0. And land is basically 0, 3, 0. And there's one more caveat. So the way those drones are constructed is every time I send a message, it is possible that one message can arrive before the other. So the drone uses this trick where I'm always sending a number 2, and then my actual parameters. So this will be the 0, 1, 0, right? And what happens is basically each time I send a new command is 2, 0, 2 something, 2, 1, 2 something, 2, 2 something. So basically, by incrementing the second digit, the drone knows in which order to execute them or whether to ignore them, right? So that's kind of the idea. So I kind of wrapped it up. And then that's kind of the thing. So let me do a quick demo. There we are. It's got evil red eyes. Oh, now green and beeping. So ngserve -o. That would help. So actually, when you download when you install the npm package, it actually has a demo project built in, so you can also like see how it is done and how it's working. So I'm using Angular material to have a search button. Yay me. It's pretty impressive, right? Look at this button, it's beautiful. And I'm pairing, and now like underneath, like I'm gonna connect, so that usually takes a few seconds, so my drone is ready to fly. And I also have like a whole set of instructions, so basically the drone can go left, right, up, down, you can turn. So let's make it go. All right, you're all gonna get a chance to say hi. Woo! Actually, I can't see it. Can somebody light the drone? I can't see which they're, oh, I see. The eyes are coming to me. Yeah. Hey, buddy. How was it? Did you see any squirrels? Come tell me. No squirrels? Oh, something else happened. Hey, any squirrels? No? Oh, there was one. Are we gonna find it? We're gonna hunt it down. Squirrels are not cute. He's eager to more. Anyone else? All right, come on, guys, say hi. So, who knows about Mexican wave? We're gonna do Mexican wave. So we're gonna start from this side, and all of you gonna stand up as the drone comes. You guys ready? On 1, 2, 3, go! Hey, good job. Well done. Come here, buddy. Come in. Oh. Trust me, I smashed a few of those. I have a whole box of them at home. They're quite robust, but I was flying it at the 50% of the maximum speed, so yeah. That's the first part of the demo. Thank you very much. He'll be back. That's not over. He's gonna be back. I have another couple of batteries, but there's one more thing I will show you later on. Let's not do any updates for now. You enjoyed it? I enjoyed it too. That's actually, all right, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I was trying to figure out how these drones work, there was this guy who came over from US because I'm based in London, and he's really high up within the company, and he didn't know me. So, and he comes over and he spends half a day in the office, and all he sees me is just playing with robots and flying drones and everything. And he goes to my manager, he's like, is Sebastian doing any work at all? And my boss was like, well, yeah, this is his job. I was like, we paying him for that? And he was like, yeah, apparently people enjoy it. So there you go. So yeah, my life sucks. So let's go. So this is how we were doing it in a browser. This is how we were doing it in Chrome. But how about going outside of Chrome? And also, you probably noticed I'm wearing this blue T-shirt with the N logo, which stands for NativeScript. So I actually work with the NativeScript team. And these are our next answer to kind of how to use mobile applications. If you use NativeScript with Angular, you can control your robots through Angular in a mobile application. And if any of you don't know what NativeScript is, it's basically an open source framework that allows you to build mobile applications with truly native UI. And you can use Angular, you can use TypeScript, you can use actually Vue, and then basically you get native UI, but underneath it runs JavaScript. And it will run both on Android and iOS, okay? So in NativeScript, we actually have a plugin called NativeScript Bluetooth that allows you to do pretty much the same. And we're gonna follow similar steps. There will be one slight difference when we're not gonna be loading services and characteristics because the API is slightly different, but the premise is the same. So we start by installing the NativeScript Bluetooth plugin into a NativeScript project. And then after that, we have to require it. And one of the things we have to do is, since we are on a real device, we actually have to ask the user for permissions, like, hey, can I use your Bluetooth, right, for this specific app? So if you call this function, then if the user accepts it, then it will get a little pop-up, and if the user accepts it, then we're ready to go. If not, we have to ask them again until they either close the app or accept. This is how you do it. So a scanning thing. So the way we scan for devices, we just say, start scanning for how long, and then on discovered, basically, so this is like a callback function that gets executed every time our Bluetooth library finds a device nearby. And then at that point, the peripheral object will contain multiple information, but the two most important ones is the UUID and the name. Name is for what you're going to display to the user. UUID is what you use to connect, etc. Then after we found all the devices and displayed to user selects one. And then at that point, what we can do is say, OK, so now I want to connect to this device with this UUID. And then when you connect it, I want to get this callback. And when the device gets disconnected, I want to do this. So on connected, usually you will navigate to another screen that has all the controllers for the drone. If you get disconnected, then you clean up. So maybe when you disconnected, you can clear out all the objects you don't need, and then you can navigate back to the scanning page. That's kind of like the usual flow. And then we actually don't have to go and read for services or characteristics. We can just jump straight into reading and writing. So to read, we basically have to every time provide the ID of the device, the service ID we're interested in, characteristic. And then this will give us a callback, a promise. And then again, we have to basically parse that value to uint8 array, and then we can display to the users. To write is very similar. So in this case, I'm actually just constructing a write options object. So again, peripheral service and characteristic UID. But also now we have the value object. And the value object can either take a string or it can be uint8 array. So whichever you prefer, this one will work. So once we have that, then we call Bluetooth.writeWithoutResponse and then pass the options. And then funny enough, actually Bluetooth has two write functions. So there's one that is without response, so it's really quick. We don't especially it's very useful when, I'll show you with the robot in a second, when you have to keep firing commands every 50 milliseconds, really continuously. So just write will be too slow. That's why we're doing write without response. So the next person, the next superhero I have here is called General Meepush, or I just call him Meep. And Meepush is a bit of a show-off, right? I'll show you. So he's very cute. He can talk. And he can also do this. He can dance. He's better than me, actually. At least when I'm sober. All right, stop. Enough. Show off. So for Meepush, I also created a library that actually works. Oops, too soon. I also created a library that you can reuse. So if you install NativeScript Meep BLE NPM module into a NativeScript project, then after you did a scan, you can pass in the UID. And then after that, you can call functions like move, set head LEDs, or you can kind of like keep sending him commands, and then he'll be executing them for you. So we wrapped it up. So for some weird reason, I updated, like I have an Android phone, and I updated it just like a few days ago, and my phone doesn't want to connect to the robot anymore. So I'll just show you very quickly like how simple it is to write the application for the robot, but I won't be able to actually connect to my phone right now for some weird reason. But I'll do it quickly and painlessly. So basically the idea of, like, you usually start by calling start scanning. And then after you scan, you usually should have some sort of like array so that whenever you found a device, you could, for example, say push, and then at this point, I can say name, peripheral dot name, and then we could do UUID, and it's peripheral dot UUID. And this also requires us to skip permission check, so yeah. Let's assume it's going to be fine. So usually this will be the function that you will use for a button like start scanning. And then as it scans, you display it like in a list view to the user so that they can select. And then basically once you selected a record, I can, for example, just do something like this where I call Bluetooth.connect. And in this case, I'm going to use this UUID. And then when connected, basically, I can print out some message, or I could just use an Angular router command. So I'm actually saying, hey, once you connect it, what's your problem? Yeah, it's an arrow function, blah, blah, blah. There we are. Yeah, once you connect it, I just want you to navigate to the Meep controller and then pass in the UUID in there, because we will need it for every instruction. So in the controller, I actually have already the service UID and characters UID. So most Bluetooth devices, they'll be using FFE5 and FFE9 for the core functionality. Outside of that, usually the most popular services, they have just like 4-character code or UIDs, and the less popular ones will have like 16 digits or characters. So once we have that, and then basically after I navigate it, I'm just taking the UID from the parameter, so that's the one we connected to. And then to send a command to write, I basically can do like Bluetooth.write. And then in this case, let's start with service UID. So I actually said this is FFE5. I could just use the variable, but I want to make it more painful and type for longer. Characteristic. A peripheral UID. So in this case, I'm going to use this, what did I call it? Device UID. And then finally, it's the value. So I just have to do like new int, bless you, add array. And then in here, like, is where we write the command. So for this drone, the guys from Wowie that created the drone, they actually published all possible commands. So for example, if I want to tell him to drive forward, I have to use the instruction 0x71. Okay, 0x71. And then we have 2 parameters like speed between 0 and 30, and then for how long between 0 and 255. So speed, let's say 20, and then how long, 150, because we can. And basically, this is enough code to find your device, connect to it, and then basically make it drive forward. So since my Android device failed, I'm actually going to use a friend's phone. You ready? Let's connect to it, and I'll actually control it from his phone. This is why you don't update Android just before presentations. Right, so I can go around and drive the guy. So this is pretty cool, right? And it's fairly responsive. There's also a lot of Bluetooth devices in the hall, so he kind of gets a little bit confused. But mostly, the guy works, and then he can moonwalk, do all sort of stuff, can talk, or you can just go to sleep. Right, so that's basically the demo of how you use the robot. So General Mipush was ready to go, and we had quite a nice army at this point. Like we had a scout drone, could do stuff, and we had the robot that could actually do some punching and carrying heavy stuff around. But then I opened the box, and then inside the box, I found this thing. This is a cannon. So I was like, not only I can scout, but probably there must be a way for this drone, if I attach it here, go and fly around and start shooting the squirrels. You know, they're not so nice. So I was like, okay, let's do it. I go to the documentation. There's nothing in documentation on how to fire the cannon. I was like, thanks. I already used half of my hair on connecting to it. So how do I do the cannon? And then I realized that there is a native Android application that had all that functionality. So all I had to do is do some reverse engineering, right? It's like, yes, let's do that. So talking to one of my friends, Uri Shaket, he told me about this little trick, that if you're on Android and you enable developer options and you enable Bluetooth HCI Snoop lock, you can actually run the application, perform all the Bluetooth commands, and then when you switch it off, you're gonna get a file called btsnoop HCI lock. And this contains all the commands you fired while you were actually snooping, right? So this is pretty awesome. So I was like, okay, what can I do with this? So there is this application called Wireshark, because when I opened this file, it was just a lot of gibberish. It's like there's no way you can figure it out because there's so much information. But if you filter all those commands by the method 0x12, that pretty much gives you all the right commands. And then you can, for example, look at each individual service, and the value is the actual command that we sent in there. So I was like, hey, we're getting somewhere, right? So how do we figure out, because if there's going to be 1,000 or 5,000 commands, how do I figure out the fire command? So I said, well, I know how to take off and I know how to land. So what I did is I had the drone stationary, I fired 2 times, then I made it take off and land very quickly, fired 3 times, take off and land, okay? And if you remember, I kind of explained, so the Android application was actually sending command for step 2, and then 010 will be for takeoff, 030 for land. So I basically just had to look for this specific commands. So let me do a quick demo of how this is done. So I already have, I'm not gonna do the recording in front of you because that actually takes good 20 minutes. But I can load Wireshark that already has that. And you can see here, I sorted by the UID, which is actually the characteristic UID. And in here, I have my takeoff and land. I have my takeoff and land. So basically here, these commands here that are very similar are my fire commands. So I can actually go and start, fighting some squirrels. How exciting. And basically, it's just 0, 2, and loads of zeros. That's kind of the idea. And I even have a few slides that kind of narrows it down to exactly what I did. But the idea is find a fire, take off and land. We're getting closer. Let's move the first part, and these are the actual specifically commands that we're after. So our command is this, 10, 0, 2, and a bunch of zeros. So after I've done that, basically I added one function, which is flight command instructions, write without response of 16, 2, and then a bunch of zeros. So I need a volunteer, a suicidal volunteer. Anyone? Come on, guys. Don't let me hang in. Where is Michael? Michael promised he would come. Michael, you here? I can't see anyone. Derek? Come on. This is Derek, my very good friend. Let's see how much I like him. So, when I shoot you, you die, right? Like, yeah. All right, you go there, you go there. Don't make it easy for me. Let's go back. Demo application, MIP controller. Don't worry, I'm gonna leave him hanging so that, you know, when you anticipating the moment, but you don't know exactly, this is the most scary moment, right? It's like, is it gonna hit me? Is it now? Is it now? How about now? Are you scared? You should be. You should be. Let's see what Polish people are made of. I'm Polish as well, so I'm allowed. Okay, let's search for the drone. There we go. Let's pair again. We're connected and ready to go. Let's aim. Fire. Oh, missed him. He's like ninja. Did you see how he dodged it? It was like, ninja. Oh, come on, I need to get closer. Oh, yes. Die. You have to die, man. Die. Yes. That was awesome. Come here, come here, come here. Enough. He's a friend. Don't do it. You didn't use the real bullets, did you? You're gonna die later, sorry. All right. I told you the presentation is gonna be serious. Actually, I didn't. So what happened after? Like, after we were fully armed, like the outcome of the unnamed woods, or pretty much the park next door to where I live, was that, you know, the squirrels, it was an unconditional surrender. They were like, we may be cute, we're just gonna use our cuteness. I was like, no more throwing peanuts, no more bazookas, we're just gonna chill and calm down. Like, just feed us, that's all we need. It was like, it turned out somebody started giving them pistachios, and pistachios like got into their heads. So that was kind of the thing. But the moral of the story, the summary. Playing with Bluetooth is fun, it's actually quite easy. There's a bunch of examples of NPM modules that I published. And it's more fun when a boss comes over and doesn't know what you do, then that's even more fun. And you can even get paid for doing that. Another thing, if you use NativeScript or like pretty much native applications, if you use Android and iOS, you can actually connect up to 10 devices simultaneously, right? So you can imagine this one MIP, I have another one, and I have like another 10 at home, because up to 10, right? Actually 8. And sometimes when I'm a bit like going crazy of coding for too long, I actually connect all of them at the same time, and I play some music and make them dance. It's hilarious. It's funny. You know, show the power of NativeScript. The next thing is, if you use web Bluetooth, you can use it on Chrome, you can use it on Mac, on Windows, on Android, and actually you can even now, if you have Chrome on iOS, on your iPhone, you can also use web applications. But the only limitation is you can only connect to one device per tap, right? So you could connect to 2 on 2 different tabs, but not from single one. So if you want to do a dance party, that's a little bit more hard. Well, I did it with Firebase anyway, so it worked. And then if you actually don't want to use promises, you can use observables. So there's like Angular Web Bluetooth. So check out that repo. It's definitely worth it. And then around reverse engineering, it can be a little bit tricky But if you use HCI Snooplog and Wireshark together, you can extract some of the information. You could try to use some pattern matching tools. I actually started building like a replay tool that allows you to rerun command by command, and you know when the command you're interested in just fired. So this can be quite useful. So that's pretty much it for me, but I can ask some, no, I can answer questions. I'm not going to ask. That would be too much. Thanks.
Great. Sebastian. It was brilliant. It was amazing. Really, really good. So one of the biggest questions that arose, and I was asking that myself, is...
Are you going to ask if I'm drunk? No, I'm sober.
No. let's answer that later, okay?
No, I'm sober. I'm serious.
Or let's try to establish the foundation for that later.
Yeah.
Would be a good idea. Now, one of the biggest questions that I had is, so your drone starts flying. It's attacking your poor friend. What happens if I close the browser window?
So basically, usually it's about the built-in functionality for specific devices. So each device acts in a different way. This specific drone will go, oh, I'm disconnected, I'll just land.
Land like really land? Or
no, he gradually goes down. So it's the same, basically you perform the same function for on disconnected or when battery gets low, then he gracefully lands. But you don't want to be over a tree.
Okay,
that's how I lost one of them. But I was flying the drone in the park, like 25 meters above, like over trees and everything, with wind and everything. They're perfectly fine.
Pretty cool. So, and which drone was that? How much did it cost?
So this is Parrot. So Parrot is the company. It's called Parrot Mambo. I think depending on the country, it can be like 100 euros, maybe 120 euros. That's kind of the price range. And it already comes with a gun and everything. Battery lasts for 8 minutes. So that's why I have 3. So I can kill more squirrels. I mean, not kill. Like, squirrels are cute now.
And I'm very sorry, I guess I have to ask this most popular question right now on Slido. So you were attacking squirrels, you know? Squirrel is a pretty hard word for an Austrian to say. You know, squirrels have a tail. You know what the name of a squirrel's tail is in Austrian dialect?
I don't know.
Wachkatzelschwarz.
Wachkatzelschwarz.
Perfect, wonderful. Sebastian Witalec, thank you very much.